Okay. We are live, I think. A few minutes early. Anybody out there? And Dale Hess, hello from Buffalo. Oh my goodness. Buffalo. How you doing there? Have you dug out? Tyler Jurgens. Hello, Tyler. We're 3 minutes away from officially launching. But I always like to check in early. Make sure we have connections. Can you guys hear me? Oh, let's get this microphone down in here. How's the audio? Can you hear me? Somebody let me know what it sounds like. Dale, did you get totally besieged? I used to live in Ithaca, so I have a rough idea how bad it is up there. Sound is strong. Okay, good. Yes, everybody can hear me. Barbecue Mike G. Excellent. I love your logo, Mike. And Bill Owen. Good to see you, Bill. Oh, we're actually getting through to LinkedIn. That's nice to know. Can't always hook up with LinkedIn. This technology stuff, dude, man, I tell you, I'm a barbecue cook. I got to learn how to use cameras and microphones and broadcast software and simulcasting software. I'll tell you, it's harder than brisket. Don Bacon, good evening and Happy New Year to you, too. We're still about a minute and a half from official launch here. I'm a believer in being on time. Oh, screw you, Philip Riggins. He's telling us he's in Birmingham, Alabama, and it's 72 degrees today. Hey, Birmingham's a cool town, and there's some nice barbecue down there. What do you do with the trimmings from a beef tenderloin? I actually have a really interesting video on how to trim a beef tenderloin. Sounds like you've already done it. It depends on the size. If you've got that kind of funny hammer-shaped nose there, I chop that off and pound it flat and make a steak out of it. Now, the chain, which is that long strip that's on the side, it's got fat on it, you really don't want to mess with that when you're doing tenderloin. I get as much fat off of it as I can, and I chop it up and I use it as stew meat or stir fry. Wife and I do a lot of Chinese stir fry, so it's really good for that. Okay, 20 seconds here. Barbecue Mike G. Let me get official rolling and then I'll answer that question here. We're 3, 2, 1, 0. Let's get the official intro.
I need ribs to ease my day. I need to find time to cook them right. My papa said, can't hurry ribs. No, you just have to wait. He said ribs.
And now, at your service, here to help you cook and eat like royalty is the barbecue whisperer and hedonism evangelist from AmazingRibs.com, the planet's biggest and baddest barbecue and grilling website, Meathead.
Boiled slabs must I stand before I find the crunch to let me live again right now.
Well, and good evening, and Happy New Year, everybody. It is absolutely, I'm just learning how to write 2022. In fact, actually, I'm still stuck on the year 2000. 1999 was rough to break out of. I'm that old. Hello, Dan Mancuso. You are as regular as rain. Good to see you again. Dan, I think, has been here almost every one. So I'm looking forward to New Year's. I'm looking forward to, typically every year, New Year's, I sit down at the dining table and spread out all my financial statements and documents and the filing system. And I try to be the first one in at my accountant's office. Often I am, too. I'm looking forward to some good football this weekend and doing a little New Year's Eve gathering just with my wife and my brother-in-law and his wife, her brother. We're real good friends with them, and we're going to do dinner and a movie. We're probably going to break up before midnight. I'm going to be an old fart. I don't have to stay up and watch the ball drop. I want to watch my head drop. I got to apologize a little bit early here. My speech may not be normal, and you may hear me swallowing a lot. Like there. A few months ago, my dentist noticed a white spot on my tongue she didn't like. And they sent me to the surgeon, the oral surgeon at Loyola Medical Center. And he took a look at it and said, it's probably nothing, but it's a discoloration. It's probably some sort of what he calls dysplasia, which is cells that aren't doing what they're supposed to do. I think we ought to take a biopsy, and while we're at it, just cut the damn thing out. So, about 3 weeks ago, the surgeon hacked off a very thin but decent-sized hunk off the right side of my tongue, this side here. And, man, I'll tell you, there's a lot of nerves in your tongue. I went through about 2 weeks of pure pain. And liquid diet, no meat. Meathead was Fruithead. Drank a lot of Ensure and yogurt drinks, kefir. Or is it kefir? I don't know. But I'm back to normal. I'm eating again. I still have a little bit of pain. And it seems that I'm salivating a lot. So I don't know. So if I sound a little funny or if I hesitate and I'm swallowing a lot, forgive me, but I'm recuperating from oral surgery, and I'm not talking teeth, I'm talking tongue, and that ain't fun. So, one of you, I forget who, was asking if over my shoulder are pages from the new book. You guys may know that I've been promising a new book for about 100 years now. I'm actually under contract now. HarperCollins paid me in advance. Pretty nice one, too. And I am under contract, and I have to deliver a first draft to them March 1st. So for the past 2 or 3 months, I have just been totally focused on finishing the book, and my team has been running the website. But that doesn't mean it's sloughing off. There's some really good new stuff on the website. And I will be turning in the first draft, and I still have some photography to do. But I'm very happy about. I've really upped. I don't know how many of you know that I actually had my master's in photography, and I've really upped my game on the photography. I'm very proud of it, and there's a lot of good stuff in this book. It's called the Meathead Method, in which I try to talk about all of the cool methods and techniques that I've learned to do over the years. Everything. Well, I wrote the section on hobo packs today. Hobo packs are where you take parchment paper or aluminum foil or even butcher paper and put maybe some salmon and some carrots and celery and other things in there. And you pinch it up tight and throw it on the fire. Great for camping. There's a nice camping section in the new book. And so I just been basically, I'm 73 years old. I don't know how much longer I got, but I'm figuring this is my opus, my final book. So I'm dumping just about everything I know into it. And frankly, there's enough for 2 books, which I know my editor, HarperCollins, is not going to appreciate. I'm lobbying for 2 books, a 2-book set. I don't know whether they'll buy that or not. We'll see. So, yes, I am working on it, and there's all kinds of stuff everywhere, and very pleased with the direction it's going, and I'm making good progress. I'm on schedule. So, that's the story on the new book. What else do we want to talk about? There's a lot of good stuff going on the website. I mentioned that my team, led by Clint Cantwell, for those of you who don't know, Clint used to run the Kingsford website. He's won all kinds of competitions. He was on national TV on one of those barbecue competition shows, and he won that. Clint's the general manager and a great recipe writer, and turning into a great manager under my guidance. And he's running the website now while I work on the book. And there's some really fun stuff. If you don't subscribe yet to our email newsletter, Smoke Signals, you really should. We don't spam you. It comes out once a month. I mean, on a rare occasion, twice, but once a month. And it contains a list of all new content on the website. We just got done wrapping up the Best New Products of the Year awards. And so if you go to a homepage, our homepage, AmazingRibs.com, you'll see a link to that. We've named all the Best New Products of the Year. And we have a new writer, Chef Steph. Chef Stephanie, or Chef Steph, out of San Diego, is a very well-known culinary blogger, and who has a great deal of specialty knowledge in sous vide. And as you may know, we pioneered the concept of sous vide Q, going from sous vide to barbecue. And she's going to carry the ball for us into the future of sous vide Q, and also griddling. Griddling's become really popular out there. I think you know that if you've been to the hardware stores, for $200-300 you can buy a griddle. I mean, you can be like Joe's Bar and Grill. You can do pancakes and eggs and steaks and all burgers, smash burgers on a griddle. Oh my! And she's going to be focusing on that for us. She has a new recipe out with us just recently, an Asian style sous vide Asian tacos. I think it's a flank steak, yeah. And that's new to the site now. You find a link on the homepage. Max Good, our full-time grill tester, just finished the much ballyhooed Traeger Timberline. Traeger has really regained the lead in the pellet smoker sphere, and they have really pushed the limits with a new, very high-tech pellet smoker that includes a complex side burner and an app and all kinds of bells and whistles. And Max came to the conclusion it's really cool, but it's got some problems. Now, I know a lot of people who are under the sway of their publicity and the advertising and the promotional materials have been raving about it. But Max he likes it, but he's got some reservations. So if you're thinking about popping $3,000 plus on the latest and greatest pellet smoker from Traeger, go read Max's review of the new Traeger Timberline. We also have from a Barbecue Hall of Famer, John Marcus, a new recipe for Philly cheesesteak. And it's done on a griddle. And he knows his Philly. And it's a lot of fun, and it's a good video that he did for us. And also, we've gotten the first of several forthcoming reviews of meat aging lockers from Chef Rick Gresh. Chef Gresh is very well respected. He was on the American Culinary Competition team that went to France. He's used to be the chef of a really great steakhouse, David Burke's Prime House here in Chicago. And he has been, where they had their own massive aging system, and he's been reviewing aging lockers for us. You can buy these they're like dorm fridges in which you can age steak, and he's reviewing those for us, and the first one is live now on the website. So that's what's new going on. I thought tonight we would kind of focus on finger foods, things that you can eat for New Year's Eve and couch skating. I mean, both have this in common. You're going to be watching TV, unless you're lucky enough to get a ticket to the big game. And even then, you don't want a lot of food. You don't want to have to sit down with a knife and fork. You want stuff that you can watch, you can tailgate, you can walk around, you can couch skate, you can eat New Year's Eve and drink. You want a glass of wine and champagne in one hand and something to mange on the other hand. And so I thought I'd, offer some ideas and suggestions. And as you know, if you're new to these little sessions, I typically start off with this kind of a monologue here and share some thoughts, and then we throw it open for question and answer for any topic. I mean, it doesn't have to be on couch skating or New Year's Eve. So, some ideas for New Year's Eve and couch skating. And a lot of these, Clint has been doing a great job of getting seasonal and topical stuff onto our homepage. There's a recipe for deep fried ribs there, and it's really cool. Now, I don't know if you're aware, everybody loves, fried chicken, onion rings, deep fried foods. I've written at length about this, and if you haven't seen it or stumbled into it, you got to go check it out. If you like fried chicken, who doesn't like fried chicken? I don't see any hands coming up. I think everybody like fried chicken? Yeah, oh yeah, that's it's a pain in the ass to do indoors because it spatters all over the place and sets off the smoke alarm. The place to do this is outdoors on your gas grill. You can do it on a charcoal grill, but it's better on a gas grill. Now, this sounds crazy at first, but think about this. Take it outside, get a Dutch oven, something with tall sides. For fried chicken, you just need an inch and a half of oil. For things like onion rings, you want a little deeper because you want to deep fry them. Chicken, you want the chicken to actually touch the hot metal at the bottom. So it's shallower oil. But you fire up your grill in two zones. You got a hot zone. The Dutch oven goes over the hot zone, and you bring it up to 375. That's your magic number for all deep frying. Some things may be better at 350. Donuts maybe 325. But 375 is the magic number. Remember that. You're not going to go wrong for deep frying. So you get that oil up to 375, and then you bread your chicken or you dunk it into a batter, whatever you want to do. And I have recipes for these. And plop it into the Dutch oven on your gas grill. Who cares if it smokes? Who cares if it spatters? And when the color is right, you take it out of the oil and you put it over on the indirect side and add more chicken to the oil and close the lid. And away you go. And you keep doing it batch at a time. And you go by the color when you see that beautiful dark golden color. If you're going to go by temperature, and you must check temperature for chicken, you'll find that often when it's absolutely gorgeous golden, it's not quite done in the center. If you're using a good instant read thermometer, you'll see maybe it's 150 and you want 160. But if you take it out and you put it on the indirect side, it's going to drip and it's going to warm from convection airflow, and it will go up to 160 while you're cooking the next batch. Fantastic. It's not dangerous. You're not going to start a fire. You're not going to knock over a 2-gallon Dutch oven on a gas grill. And even if you do, the worst that's going to happen is you're going to burn up a $500 gas grill. Knock over a 2-gallon Dutch oven on your kitchen stove, and you're going to burn up a $500,000 house. So it's safer than doing it indoors. And fried foods, fried chicken, perfect for holiday. So go read my articles on frying on your gas grill. You can do it on a charcoal grill, but it's a little harder to control the temperature on a gas grill. After the cold chicken hits the oil, the temperature nosedives down to 300. You crank it up, bring it up to 375. Now it's cooking. Now you take it down. It's easy to control the temperature. So, Clint has a recipe for deep fried ribs, and it's really cool. There's a recipe I have on the site for smoked chili. You start with chuck, beef chuck, or you could use brisket or another cut, and you smoke it. You don't have to cook it all the way through. You know, meat can pick up a lot of smoke flavor in an hour or an hour and a half or two. You don't have to leave it on there 6-8 hours. And an hour or two of smoke on a piece of chuck, cut it into cubes, make up your chili, dump it in there, and now it's surrounded by liquid, and it'll cook faster in liquid than it will in smoky air. And you're going to have a smoked chili that's really nice. And I've got a couple of recipes with and without beans. Don't shoot me, you guys in Texas. There are people in Cincinnati and elsewhere who like their chili with beans. So, there's some smoked chili on the site. Another fun one is armadillo eggs. This is a hard-boiled egg surrounded by sausage and then rolled in a breadcrumbs or something. And you can either smoke them, grill them, or fry them. And they're just fun. Sausage and eggs, like peanut butter and jelly. And armadillo eggs, if you've never made them, just a lot of fun. And you can pick them up with your fingers and pop them. Speaking of popping, how about some jalapeno poppers? Now, some of us, like me, are not real tolerant of high heat. But jalapenos are not really high heat. Now, you probably all know this, but I'm just going to say it anyhow because I'm always surprised at how many people don't know it. The heat in hot peppers is not so much in the seeds. There's some heat in the seeds. Most of the heat is in the ribs. It's called the placenta. And that little cluster at the top, right under the stem. That's the placenta. That's where all the heat is concentrated. And when you cook jalapenos, it kind of diffuses them. It cuts back on the heat. So you can take a jalapeno, and I get a potato peeler because it's kind of curled and sharp. And I cut the stem off and reach in there with the potato peeler. Another thing that works real well is those serrated spoons for grapefruit, or even just a paring knife, and cut out that central placenta and the stem, and now you've got this hollow tube, and stuff it. The simplest stuffing is just plain cream cheese, but I've got a recipe on the web. Here's another one I think I'm going to hit. Everybody loves Boursin cheese. Boursin cheese is basically cream cheese with herbs. And it used to be, kind of a garlicky and herby thing. Now they've got like 43 different flavors. But I've got a recipe on how to take plain old cream cheese and turn it into homemade Boursin. Pretty close. And you can riff on it. You can take it your own direction. If you want more garlic, put more garlic. Put whatever you want in there. But you make a Boursin, or you can buy Boursin, stuff it down into these jalapenos, throw them on the grill or in the smoker, and they're fun. Finger foods again. You can even buy a gizmo. They sell them on Amazon. It's a rack where you stand the jalapenos up in them so the cheese doesn't spill out. Pretty cool stuff. Moink balls. Moink balls are just meatballs, and I've got a really good... I married an Italian-American, and she's a hell of a cook. So we have a really good meatball recipe, and moink balls are just meatballs wrapped in bacon. How far wrong can you go? They're a lot of fun. Put toothpicks in them. People pop them. Make them small. You don't need to make 2-inch meatballs. If we're deep frying, deep fry some pickles. I have both recipes for a batter, which is the wet stuff that you dunk fried stuff in, and for a dredge, which is the dry stuff like breadcrumbs and flour. And so I have a good batter recipe and fried pickles. Clint's got a great recipe for bacon, praline bacon. So it's, you can diddle with bacon. You can you can put it in the oven and put some brown sugar on it, or little chips of Heath bar. My wife is a baker, and she's always got the little Heath bar chips. And Clint came up with a praline bacon. It's really fun. That's something. Again, I'm kind of focusing on finger foods here. Smoked nuts. I mean, I go down to Chicago's Navy Pier, or you go to the state fair or the county fair, and you smell those candied cashews. I know how to make them. You can make them. There's recipes on the website for smoked nuts, seasoned nuts, flavored nuts, and I've got more. I haven't put them all up on there yet. The secret is if you've been hanging around me or reading my book or watching the website, you know that smoke sticks to wet surfaces. So the secret to getting good smoked nuts is wet them. So if you're going to do cashews, for example, or almonds, dump them in a bowl of water 15, 20 minutes. It's not going to penetrate much. But you're going to get the surface wet. Then you can apply your seasoning. You can use egg white to get them really crunchy. I talk all about this on the website. And toss them in the smoker on a grill topper. Spread them out. Doesn't take long. Fantastic. Who doesn't like smoked nuts? There's a fun recipe on the website for a Southern Comfort cider. Apple cider, fresh cider. If you're buying fresh cider, get the pasteurized stuff. You can buy fresh cider at a cider mill that isn't pasteurized, but you're running a slight risk. Apples fall on the ground, deer, rabbits, squirrels are on the ground there, and it can get contaminated. But they pasteurize it. It doesn't diminish the flavors significantly. There's a slight down. But you can get this unfiltered fresh cider, not the Mott's apple juice, but this is apple cider. It's kind of brown and opaque. Wonderful, and you can add. There's a recipe for doing it with Southern Comfort. It's a lot of fun. Also, smoked Bloody Marys. Now, my new book has a whole chapter on smoked cocktails, and I haven't put many of them on the website. I will eventually, but you run into this business with your publisher, who says, "Well, we don't want the book to have a lot of stuff that's free on the website." And, I went through this with the last book. They just haven't come into the 21st century. I tried to explain that books and websites are different. That people sit down with a book and they read it on the toilet. That a website, they jump around and they get lost. And I got 2,000 pages on our website, for crying out loud. But there's still, the book publishing industry, they're still using abacuses. In any case, there'll be a whole section in the new book on smoked cocktails, grilled cocktails, fire, and cocktails. But we have a smoked Bloody Mary recipe on the website that's fun. Another idea to play with is wings. I mean, everybody loves wings. They're really easy to make, and they're wonderful on the grill. And you can get them good and crispy, or you can deep fry them. Believe it or not, we have a recipe for cocktail weenies. I mean, come on. Now, I don't know about you guys. My generation, cocktail weenies was party food. I'm just saying. Guacamole. I've tried smoking avocado, and it just doesn't work for me. But we have a plain old-fashioned guacamole recipe because it's party food, and you got to have party food. We've got a really good smoky salsa verde. And here's an idea for a party, and I do this at tailgates. It's a lot of fun. There are distinct regional styles of hot dogs in America. There's a Chicago hot dog, and it's different than a Detroit hot dog, and it's different than a New York hot dog, and it's different than a Dodger dog, different than a Seattle dog. They tend to have regional styles, not like burgers. Here in my little hometown, there's 40 different burger variations and no two. But when you want a hot dog in Chicago, they're all made the same way. 7 ingredients, nothing more, nothing less, no ketchup. And you go to Coney Island, there's a very distinctive style. And I've got all of these recipes, every regional hot dog style I could find, on the website, and it's great fun. And they all start with a hot dog and a bun. And the big difference is the condiments and the toppings. Now, there are some minor differences. Some dogs are simmered, some dogs are grilled, some buns are plain, some buns have poppy seeds. But it's a great party concept, and especially if you know, for example, your team is playing the LA Chargers. Well, it's an old ritual of primitive societies to eat your enemy. Warriors would kill an enemy and eat him. So you play on the Chargers? Cook some Dodger dogs and eat them. And Chicago dogs are marvelous, but they're not going to be in the playoffs. So you make the hot dog that is indicative of the style of the enemy team, and you eat them. Or you can serve your own hometown dogs too, It's a fun concept, and it's a great way to lay out a party. And what could be easier than just grilling off a bunch of hot dogs? And then you put out a whole bunch of condiments. Fun party concept. And I tell the story of each of the dogs so you can read them, and then you can say, well, we're doing Sonoran dogs here today because we're playing the Cardinals from Arizona, and the Sonoran dog is made, and yada, yada, yada. One other thought here, and that is we have on the site a pretty darn good tailgating, couchgating checklist. Stuff you need to think of if you're going to the game or if you're cooking at home. I mean, obviously, you don't need to remember to bring the tickets if you're cooking at home. But I've tried to include just about everything you can think of that you need to do if you're tailgating or couchgating. And also, there's if you're lucky enough to go to the game, we have Max Good, who is the only full-time grill tester in the world. And he's got a whole list of portable grills, easy to carry. So there's some thoughts, and I've gone much longer than I normally do. Remarkable, considering my tongue still hurts. So let's go to you, and let me start at the top. And right at the top, I just want everybody to say hello to Dale Hess, who's with us. He was the first one to log in, and he's from Buffalo. Good Lord, Dale. I'm glad you were able to dig your way to the computer. Let's see. We got Mike from Kentucky, and let's see if we've got any questions. All right, we talked to Don right at the top about he wants to know what to do with the trimmings of a beef tenderloin. Let me just briefly repeat that since we didn't have a lot of folks here. Beef tenderloin, as you know, it's this long tube, but it tapers at one end. It's got sort of a kind of funny hatchet shape at the other end, and then there's this strip of meat attached to the side. And you want to chop off that little pointy end. You can leave it on there for the people who like well done, but it's going to cook over while the rest of the meat is cooked properly. And then I chop off that kind of hammerhead at the end, and I take it and pound it flat. It makes a marvelous filet mignon steak. That chain, they call it, that strip of meat, and there's a lot of fat in it along the side. You want to peel that off, and you can get rid of much of the fat and chop it up and use it for stew meat or stir fry. And you want to peel off as much as you can of the silver skin, and that's a connective tissue that can contract. It can be very tough and chewy. You're going to lose a little meat underneath there, and I know these things are expensive. In fact, my niece called me today, and she said, we went shop. We usually do tenderloin for New Year's Eve, and we went shopping, and beef rib primal was half the price per pound. Well, rib primal that's your ribeye. That's much better tasting than a filet mignon, in my world. It's higher marbling and it's better tasting. So I explained to her how to go for that. But filet mignon is really tender. It's the most tender cut on the animal. I think the rib primal is more flavorful. Tyler wants to know what I'm cooking. I mentioned New Year's. Tyler, we're going out. I think we're going to we're going to a steakhouse in LaGrange, Illinois. They have a nice steakhouse there with a nice wine list. Oh, Dan, you're doing a leg of lamb. Yeah, well, first of all, I do have... all right, you're going to smoke your first leg of lamb for New Year's Eve. A couple of thoughts. I love lamb and I love beef. And if you put me equidistance between lamb loin chops and a ribeye steak, which are about the same cut, I die of starvation trying to decide which one to eat first. I absolutely adore lamb. But I love brisket, which is cooked long and low and slow and smoked. But when it comes to leg of lamb, I don't care for a lot of smoke flavor on it, or beef ribs or beef primal. I like them with a good rub, a light smoke. I prefer to grill them, a reverse sear. Now, your call. If you want to smoke it, go ahead. It's not going to hurt it because the smoke's not going to penetrate far. And it's going to give it a nice flavor. But my leg of lamb recipe on AmazingRibs.com is basically grilled. And you got to be cautious about a leg of lamb. It's like a ham. It's very thick on one side and tapers to the other, which is okay if you've got people who like it more well done than others. Or you can have your butcher bone it out. Now, you can do it yourself, but it is one stinking pain. First of all, you have the shin bone and then the thigh bone. No problem. It's easy. You can cut right along that. They come out. But usually, there's what they call the H bone, the AITCH, H bone. And that's the hip bone. And it's just kind of all gnarly, and it's just a pain to get it out. When you're done, if you do bone it out, you have this big slab of lamb that runs from an inch thick to 3 inches thick, and it's all gnarly and stuff. It's okay. What you do is you can now stuff it. And it's really good with things like dried fruits, figs, apricots. You can soak them in wine, little sherry or port, and or even pesto. And then you roll it up and knot it up and tie it. Now you've got sort of an equal tube that's roughly the same thickness on both ends. And then I grill it. Start it on an indirect side, warm it. My target temp is 130 to 140. I'll take lamb a little, for steak, 130, 135. Lamb, I'll allow it to go up to 140 where it's more pink than rosy. It's okay. It's really good at that, in that range. And so you indirect cook it until it hits around 120, 125. And then you roll it over the hot side and sear the snot out of it. Get a really good dark crust on it. And then you slice it up. And man, it is really good eating. I just adore a leg of lamb. But it can be a problem. And it depends on, now if you're going to cook it with bone in, that's fine. It works just fine with bone in. Problem is you've got that little tapered end that's going to overcook. And what you could do, depending on how many people are coming, is just cut that off, set it aside, and you'll grill it up another night. Ryan Leal, our boneless, skinless chicken breasts were searing. They're so long, does searing meat that's virtually fatless add flavor? Yeah, it does. The issue, now, I went through a phase there when I was younger, and with my wife and I were both really diet conscious, where we were doing boneless, skinless chicken. And what happens is if you cook it hot, it'll actually dehydrate the surface. And you'll get kind of a crunchy surface, almost like a skin. What I would recommend is use a really good rub or marinate. Now, very important people understand this. Marinades don't penetrate more than, say, 1/8 of an inch. And you can marinate it overnight and then cook it. And if you cut it in half and taste a core sample, you're not going to taste the marinade. But it does affect the outside. And when you chew, that marinade flavor mixes in. So you might consider marinating it and then sear it after an indirect heat. Reverse sear. If you don't know what reverse sear is, go to our website and look it up. But it's a basic core concept that everyone here should understand and know. And basically it says you slowly, gently cook the meal first. And then you move it over to hot side and sear it to get the crust. And it's really important technique. Now, I might ask you why you're skinning it. Because although there is a lot of fat in the skin, there's a lot of flavor in that skin. Now, a technique that I have had fun with and that I'm doing in my new book is I take the skin off now a lot of times and I'll grill that separately until it gets crunchy like a potato chip. And then, let's say I'm going to do pulled chicken, I crumble it, or on a chicken salad, crumble it on top. Oh, that's good. Chicken skin, crunchy. So yeah, you can have fun with it. Go for flavor. Chicken breast is low in flavor. It's a mild tasting meat. So go for marinade or rub, and you'll be fine. You'll have fun. Oh, Dan, Dan, I mentioned that I had this operation on my tongue, and I forgot to mention, the biopsy came clean. I'm perfectly safe, no problem. I'm safe and thanks for reminding me. I didn't get to that part. Oh, look who is here. Chef Steph herself is here. I mentioned earlier that we have a new recipe developer and writer. Siri is talking to me over here. She thinks I'm... Siri, go to sleep.
Something went wrong. Let's try again.
Oh, for Christ's sake. Chef Steph is here. What a talented chef who has joined our team. And I mentioned earlier, I don't know if Chef you were here to hear me introduce you, but she's going to be focusing primarily on sous vide Q and griddling and some other things. And it's just a pleasure to have a accomplished chef like her writing for us now, and I'm really excited. And her first recipe is already up on the website, so go to the website and look at Chef Steph. She did some fun stuff for us already. Southern's Barbecue. How will this book differ from the last one? Well, first of all, there's a lot more technique. It's called the Meathead Method. So I talk a lot more about the technique. But I also talk about creativity and art and how you can up your game and think more creatively and get outside the box. I mean, we all do beautifully. We should be able to do beautifully with not a lot of effort to do pulled pork and ribs and grilled chicken and stuff. But how many of us are playing with Asian ingredients, Spanish flavors? And I've got a lot of recipes that bring those into the picture. So and of course the publisher wants me to make sure that it doesn't duplicate the last book. Now, of course, I've had to cover some of the same territory. I've had to explain what two-zone cooking is and what reverse sear is, because those are foundational concepts. But let's just get a look here. Let me pull up. Stand by. Okay, open recently. There it is, Meathead Method. Let's just get a quick look at the table of contents, and I'll share with you some of what I'm up to. There we go. Okay. The title is, let me get it right, The Meathead Method, Barbecue and Grilling Science, which of course was the focus of the last book, meets culinary art. And I try to bring artistry to the table. I don't know how many of you know, but I actually have a master's in art. So this is my way of paying for my master's degree. There's a whole section on sensory science, which we didn't touch upon last time. How your sense of smell and taste works and how that affects the food we're cooking. Then there's a whole section on food science and the basic core ingredients of food. What is food? What is in food? Water, protein, fat, minerals, carbohydrates, starch, salt. We talk a lot about these components and how they react to energy or heat. And what is fire? And we talk a lot more about the nature of smoke in this book than we did in the last book. Safety. There's a lot more about food safety and the microbes that are lurking for us out there and how to keep them at bay. And I go off on a rant on food and health and what a lot of people think is healthy and whether they're right or wrong, and what the current state of the art is in food and health. We talk about the aggravating spring columns that show up everywhere about grilling causing cancer and why they're wrong. And I try to myth bust the raw food fad. And I take on the subject of eating meat. There are just a lot of people who think we should stop eating meat. And we talk about the health benefits and the health disadvantages of eating meat. And I've tried to be balanced, but, you know, I have a prejudice. I have a imaginary debate with a vegetarian about both sides, in which I've tried to portray both sides about why we should eat meat and why we shouldn't. Shopping. Some really good tips on how to shop. I didn't touch that at all in the last book. What to look for when you're shopping, to beware of certain things. There's a lot of stuff going on that you may not be aware of. For example, when you buy a steak that's in one of those styrofoam things covered with plastic, there's often nitrogen injected into that little tray, and that helps keep the meat rosy. So you may think it's very fresh and rosy, but it may not be. It may just be the nitrogen. And we talk about that stuff. Oops, things are jumping around. I go in a whole section about the tools I use. All the gadgets and gadgets and gizmos and what I recommend and not recommend. There's a good section on knives. And a lot of stuff on methods. There's sous vide Q in this book. We didn't touch it in the last book. Sous vide is just a really fascinating technique, and when you combine it with grilling and smoking, it's really interesting and really cool. And in fact, I get into, let me scroll back up here. Stand by. I got some of the things that we touch base on in this book. Here we go. A lot of vegetables. A lot of cooking with vegetables. We have a section on competition cooking. Griddling. We didn't touch on either of those. On aging beef and why you should age it. And the use of koji, which is a fascinating mold which can faux age meat. We talk about cooking with cannabis. That was fun. Not done with that chapter yet. Tandoori cooking. Deep frying. What I call the afterburner, which is cooking on top of a charcoal chimney. Using mayonnaise as a slather and why it is really cool. How to torch with a Bunsen burner. Camping section. Hobo packs. Walking. Oh, man, I've been having more fun. You know, if you love Chinese or Japanese or any Asian foods and you cook with a wok, wok's a marvelous device. You just can't get that wok hot enough on your kitchen stove, even if it's a gas stove. But you can get it rip snorting hot, just like in a Chinese restaurant, on top of a charcoal chimney. You get a charcoal chimney, fill it halfway with charcoal, light it up, and the top of that chimney is in the thousands. It's just really nasty hot. And we've got some wok techniques and recipes in the new book. Fireplace cooking. Schwenkering, which is these tripods that you can cook on. Paella. And fondue. I've been doing fondue in a flower pot with some charcoal in the center and hot oil or chocolate on top, and that's fun. On a hot summer day, do fondue on the picnic table out back. Tea smoking, like Chinese tea smoking, it's a very interesting, elegant flavor. Rotisserie, I didn't touch much on that last time, and so on. So there's a lot of new stuff there. And now I turn in the rough draft, the manuscript, March 1st. You won't see this book till a year from March or April 24. But it new stuff. Jesse and Charlotte Martinez. Why does my turkey come out too dark in the pit barrel? That's going to be a tough one to fight, Jesse. Number one, one technique to combat that is to make sure that charcoal is fully engaged, fully lit. Light the charcoal and don't put the meat in there until the charcoal is completely covered with ash. When charcoal is igniting, it starts cold and it goes through an ignition process as the temperature rises, and it puts out gases that are part of the smoke plume, and they include compounds that can make food dark. And as the charcoal gets up to full temp, completely covered with white ash, there's no smoke. And anybody who lights charcoal will know this. You light the charcoal and it just starts belching smoke. That smoke is not as tasty as invisible smoke. The best tasting smoke is what we call blue smoke, and it's invisible. You can't see it. The particles are so tiny, they don't refract light. So I don't know if this is the issue. I mean, maybe you're doing this, but I would first make sure that your charcoal is fully lit. And I would not use lump charcoal. Lump charcoal, everybody thinks this is pure and natural and next to God. Lump charcoal is whole chunks of wood that have been put in a big tank called a retort, and they're ignited and they're sealed off, and oxygen burns out and they smolder, and it turns to what they call carbon. But it doesn't always carbonize all the way through. And often there's raw wood, lignin and cellulose in the center, and they put out a lot of smoke and a lot of impurities. Briquettes. Now, a lot of people say, oh, briquettes, there's all kinds of chemicals in them. I don't want to use them. The chemicals in briquettes are harmless as far as I can tell. But if you're concerned about them, you can buy briquettes that are pretty much chemical-free. There's several brands, and I have lists of them on the website, where you can, I think B&B is one and a few others, that are just pure char compressed into briquettes. And get them fully lit, covered in ash, and you won't have impurities, and it may make your turkey paler. Okay. Neville Holmes from Brisbane, Australia. Hello, Neville. I think you win the award from the furthest. Oh, Dan's the guy who's doing the leg of lamb. He's already made the rub and board sauce. You're going to love the board sauce. Board sauce is a really cool idea. Basically, you get a bunch of fresh herbs. I give you a recipe, but you can get just whatever the hell you want. And you just chop them all up with some garlic, and if you want to throw some red peppers or chilies, chop them all up real fine. Put in a cup, pour in some olive oil, mix them all up, and then go grill your meat. And when the meat comes off, you pour this board sauce on the board. And so now you have herb-infused oil, and the meat sits on top of it. And the juices come out and mix in the herb-infused oil, and you'll be surprised how little, well, no, I won't say how little. You would think that the herbs are going to overwhelm the meat. They don't. And it really is nice. And the oil, of course, gives it a moisturizer. If you're cooking whole chicken, what weight range do you stay with mainly for flavor? Basically, your standard grocery store, they used to call them broilers, they're all 3.5 to 4 pounds. That's the industry standard. It takes 8 weeks or so for them to grow from egg. Can you imagine 8 weeks from 0 to 3.5, 4 pounds? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you don't have a lot of choice. But I will say this. When I cook chicken, I break it down into the parts because thighs and drumsticks are dark meat. And they like to be cooked a little more, 165 to 170, than breast meat, 155 to 160. And so I cook them in individual parts, and I temp them and take them off when they're optimum temp. Or what I do is I put the dark meat on first, and then 10 minutes later the breasts go on. I also I get the bones out and I pound breast flat, because your typical breast is bulbous on one end and flat on the other end. So the flat end is going to overcook and maybe even burn, while the bulbous end is cooked perfectly. So I pound the breast. You get a Ziploc bag and you put the breast, you cut the bones out, put the boneless breast in there, and you get a frying pan and just pound it until it's even thickness. What type of camera gear am I using for the photography? I'm an old SLR guy. I did my master's back in the 70s, and anybody who knows photography, I did my undergraduate work under Jerry Uelsman, who just died last year. But Jerry was one of the great geniuses of photography of the 20th century. It's not at hand here, but I work with a DSLR, and let's, just for the fun of it, stand by. I'm very proud of my photography, and because there's an art theme to this book, I've really worked hard. Okay, now let's get back over here. Stick with me. Okay, there we are. All right, I'm sharing my screen. I don't know if you can see it. Let me get rid of this guy. And these are some of the recipe photos. Oops, wait a second. Okay. So, this is a lovely bowl of smoked brisket and herbs and vegetables. Of course, you recognize the beef ribs. That is a red snapper with dill. A squash velouté, smoked squash velouté. I forget what this recipe is called. A pork chop with a board sauce. There you go. Just like we were talking about, chopped herbs and oils. Figs with balsamico. This is a pounded flat turkey breast that I have butterballed. I have injected it with butter. And you can't do it when it's cold because then the butter seizes up. So you have to do it after it's warmed up a bit. You inject it while it's cooking. And then these are dried cranberries that I have reconstituted in port wine. You put them into port wine and they bloat with the port wine, and boy, are they good. And then there's chips of turkey skin. We were talking earlier about chicken skin chips. That's turkey skin. Boy, that's a good recipe. Lobster. Crawfish. Negronis with smoked ice. I need to say, while I'm bragging, these pictures are done in a dark room. There is no light. All the light that you see in this picture comes from a pen light. It's no bigger than a pen or a pencil. And I point it at the objects and move it around. It's almost a dance. And then I take multiple exposures. So in this picture, The glass with the Negroni is one exposure. The rack of pipes is another. The shaker in the background is another, and the top for the shaker. There's like 5 pictures sandwiched here in Photoshop. This is another one. This is a Normand from Normandy, a pork chop with sage, apples, and cider. A spatchcock chicken. Fun stuff. I'm very proud of this. There's a fried chicken. We were talking about doing fried chicken. There it is. Scallops with black garlic. Oh, butter. I use ghee. Ghee is clarified butter with black garlic, scallops, and kumquats. So you can see these recipes are just way outside the norm. I'm really getting and having fun doing creative stuff. And I want you guys to do this. I want you guys to break out of the regular barbecue canon. Grilled broccoli with breadcrumbs and butter. Fun stuff. Very proud of it. A lot of hard work, both in the recipes and the photography. And I'm boring you because, there's the can of butter. Cannabis butter. And then some cocktails. Octopus. Okay, so enough of that. So let's get back to our bull session here. How do I get back to reality? Oh, there we go. Now you got to stare at me. I'm not as pretty as the pictures. Pretty cool, huh? Jim Tortorelli. Hey, Jim, we may be related. My wife is named Tortorello. Little turtle doves. I think that's the rough translation, turtle dove. Are you from Jersey by any chance? There's a Tortorelli family over that way, I think. You may be related to my wife. We may be kissing cousins. Use your Blackstone grill for wok recipes because it can get hot. Yeah, it gets hot, but not as hot as a charcoal chimney. And you harvesting your chickens at 7 to 10 pounds? Wow, I'd love to taste something like that. John Knapp is saying that chickens at Meyer are around 6 pounds? Really? That's just hard to believe. The chicken industry is just a machine. They just pump them all out. I mean, to get a chicken up to 6 pounds is expensive. It eats a lot of feed and it takes a lot of time. And they don't want it to take time or eat a lot of feed. Thank you, Steph. Steph is saying she likes my pictures. But she works for me. She has to say that. You're in Chicago, Jim? So are we. The Tortorello family is all over Chicago. It's huge. Jim, I'm Meathead at AmazingRibs.com. Drop me a note and let's see if there's a relay. I built years ago Tortorello.com. It's way out of date. But there's the store. There were like 7 brothers that came over from Italy. I'm boring everybody. I've reached the bottom of the question list. So we got any more questions? And I got to tell you, normally we go on for an hour and a half. Normally I would go another 30 minutes. But if you came here at the beginning, you know that I had some surgery on my tongue. And it's a little uncomfortable. Oh, I just missed David Maxey's question. Will injecting butterballing, a beef roast, inject moisture as marbling would, or will it just run out? It will. I mean, I just wrote a chapter for the new book on this concept of juiciness. And everybody thinks of juiciness as sort of juice, water. But there are really three factors. The water that's in the meat, it comes out pink. And I think you've heard me say it's not blood. It's just water that's been tinted pink by a protein called myoglobin, or as they call it, myo water. If it was blood, it would be thick and black, and it would coagulate, but it's runny and watery. So that's a major part of the juiciness, because meat is 75% water. But melted fat is another part. Beef fat melts in the 130 to 140 degree range. So if you serve beef rare at 120, you haven't quite melted all the fat. If you serve beef medium rare, 130 to 135, now you're melting the fat, and so you're getting moisture from the fat. Also, there's saliva. And it's a major part of the moisture juiciness experience. When you see a sizzling steak placed in front of you, you start salivating. And there's a lot of water, saliva, and mucus, and it's full of enzymes that break down things and create flavor, and it is crucial to the juiciness experience. So everybody worries about, well, you got to rest the meat because it's going to spit out a lot of liquid. First of all, it doesn't spit out a lot more liquid than if you don't rest it. Second of all, if you put a sizzling steak on the table, people are going to salivate. That's going to make it more juicy. But you can inject fat. Now, the question about injecting butter is an interesting question. Do you think butter is going to improve a beef roast? Now, it depends on what kind or what cut of beef you're using. I just served USDA Choice prime rib. Now, it's not prime, it's choice for Christmas. And it was like butter. Now, I must confess, I sous vide'd it first, then grilled it, which makes it very tender. But, golly, if you've got a really good tender beef roast, it shouldn't need butter. And do you want butter flavor with beef? I'm not sure that it's a combination I'm really crazy about, but it might work. But yes, the key here is, as I said about that turkey, is you want to bring it up to temp. You can't inject it with butter, even though you've melted it, while the meat's cold, because as soon as it hits the meat, it's going to solidify and it's going to clog up your injector and everything. So you got to throw the meat on the fire. You got to bring it up into, I think, the 90, 100 degree range, which is when butter will stay liquid. And then you inject it while it's hot. And see how you like it. But you shouldn't need to if you've got yourself a nice roast. You know, I mean, that goes to something that I think probably all of you know, because you're into food. You've heard this before. Start with quality ingredients. I mean, you just can't turn bad ingredients into great food. You can improve it, but quality ingredients is the most important part of the cooking process. So if you've got yourself a good roast, you shouldn't need to inject it. And I hear people every year at Thanksgiving saying, I'm going to inject my turkey with Dr. Pepper. And I was like, really? I mean, do you really want your turkey to taste like... I mean, I love Dr. Pepper. But, yeah, I don't know about that. John's asking if... John Knapp said, yeah, I'm in Brookfield, John. Been here since 1990. And we dine in LaGrange a lot. There's a lot of nice restaurants nearby. Tom is saying some very nice things, which I'm not going to read because I'll just start blushing. Well, James I'll read what you say because right below Tom Farley's love and praise, I hope you haven't logged out, Jan. I've had it Meathead. You canceled Memphis that I bought your book in anticipation of attending. I canceled Memphis because COVID was running. We were planning a big conference in Memphis, and it was 3 months after the December Omicron spike, and I didn't really cancel it. Half the attendees canceled. I couldn't get anybody to pay. It would have bankrupted us, and I was not going to have a conference in Memphis with 400 people in a room with Omicron going crazy. So if you want to be pissed at me, go right ahead. He says I'm very thin-skinned on criticism. I disagree. I'm very data-driven, and if you have a valid, I'm delighted to hear it. Daddy told me praise is cheap. Everybody will praise you. I didn't want to read Tom Dobbs because it's full of praise. He said criticism is priceless. Give me your criticism. He said, I'm an early member of the Pitmaster Club. On the verge of leaving completely. There are other sources for good barbecue. Yeah, there's good sources for good barbecue, but I tell you, in my little modest, humble opinion, nothing like our website. All right, well, I'm going to take this tender tongue and give it a rest, and I'm sorry that I'm cutting out a little earlier than I normally do. We'll be back next month, last Thursday, what's this? So, thanks very much for hanging out with me and hitting me with your questions. And we'll be back next month. I don't know what topics we'll take on, but you know me. I'm here. And if you have criticism, bring it. And have a happy new year, everybody. Don't forget to write 23 on your checks. Good night, all.
That's all for now, folks. Thanks for staying awake, and please visit AmazingRibs.com for the articles, recipes, and reviews mentioned in this chat with the Barbecue Whisperer and Hedonism Evangelist from AmazingRibs.com, the planet's biggest and baddest barbecue and grilling website, Meathead.
It's